I stood frozen in the driveway, my car keys biting into my palm, as my mother's voice echoed from the porch. Return the $60,000, Claire, or don't bother coming back. The Christmas lights twinkled behind her, but her eyes were cold. Why? Would the woman who raised me think I'd steal her life savings? Hey, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. It's amazing to connect with all of you. Don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories every day. Hey, I'm Claire. This isn't one of those cozy holiday stories where everyone hugs it out over hot cocoa. This is about the night my family decided I was a thief, the night I stopped being their daughter. And the moment I realized the truth was sharper than any lie they'd told themselves. It was December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, and I'd driven 6 hours through a snow-dusted highway to our family home in upstate New York. The plan was simple: drop off gifts, share a meal, maybe laugh over old photo albums. I'd even brought my famous cranberry bread, the one Aunt June swore was better than her own. The house smelled like pine and roasted garlic when I walked in, my boots still dusted with snow. The dining room was set, the good china gleaming under the chandelier, and my parents, my brother Ethan, and my sister Nora were already seated. I was late. Traffic on I-87 was brutal, but I was there, smiling, ready to be home. Or so I thought. I was still unwrapping my scarf when Dad cleared. His throat, his fork hovering over his plate. "Claire," he said, his voice low, like he was reading a verdict. "We need to talk about the money." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. Dad wasn't the joking type, but Christmas was a time for surprises, right? Except no one else laughed. Nora stared at her wine glass, swirling it like it held answers. Ethan's jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the tablecloth. Mom's hands were folded in her lap, her knuckles white. "What money?" I asked, my smile fading. That's when Mom looked up, her face carved with something I'd never seen before. Disappointment, maybe, or worse, certainty. "The $60,000, she said. "From my retirement account. It's gone, Claire. And the bank says it was you." The room tilted. My scarf slipped from my hands, pooling on the floor like spilled ink. I'm a financial analyst, 32 years old, the kind of person who triple-checks spreadsheets and catches errors no one else sees. I'd spent years building a reputation for precision, handling corporate accounts worth millions. And now, my own mother was accusing me of stealing her savings. "You're kidding," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "You think I'd take your money?" Ethan finally looked up, his eyes hard. "The bank traced the transfers, Claire. They went to an account linked to your name. 3 withdrawals, all last month, right after you helped Mom with her new banking app." My mouth went dry. I had helped Mom set up that app. Her old bank had switched to a digital platform, and she'd called me, flustered, saying she didn't trust those internet things. I'd driven up on a weekend, sat with her at the kitchen table, walked her through passwords and 2-factor authentication. She'd even hugged me after, called me her tech genius. That was 6 weeks ago. Now that moment was being weaponized against me. I didn't sit down. I couldn't. The cranberry bread sat untouched on the counter, its foil glinting under the kitchen lights. "This is insane," I said, looking from Mom to Dad to Nora. "I didn't touch your money. I don't need your money." Dad's voice cut through, sharp and final. "Then explain the transfers, Claire. Explain why the bank has your digital footprint all over it." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Digital footprint? I'd set up the app on Mom's phone, sure, but I hadn't logged in since. I hadn't even saved the password. Nora leaned forward, her voice soft but edged, like she was trying to be kind while twisting the knife. "We didn't want to believe it, Claire. But the evidence, it's all there. You were the only one with access." Evidence. The word hit like a slap. My family wasn't just doubting me. They'd already convicted me. I looked at Mom again, searching for the woman who'd taught me how to braid my hair, who'd slipped extra cookies into my lunchbox. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She just sat there, her napkin pressed to her lips like she was holding back something unspeakable. That's when it sank in. They didn't just suspect me. They believed it. All of them. Ethan, who'd once crashed my first car and begged me not to tell Dad. Nora, who'd called me crying when her engagement fell apart, asking for advice. Dad, who'd pinned my college diploma on the fridge like it was his own. They'd all decided I was capable of this. I set my keys on the table, the clink loud in the silence. "You're wrong," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I'll prove it." Dad's eyes narrowed. "You have until New Year's, Claire. Return the money or don't come home again." I didn't cry when I walked out. I didn't slam the door or yell. I just picked up my coat, left the cranberry bread behind, and stepped into the snow. The Christmas lights blurred as I drove away, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror. I didn't go far, just to a motel off the highway, the kind with flickering neon signs and vending machines that only took quarters. The room smelled like stale coffee and pine air freshener. I sat on the edge of the bed, my laptop open, my hands still shaking. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious, not at the accusation, but at how easily they'd believed it. Years of being the reliable one, the one who fixed their problems, and this was what I got. A family that didn't even ask if I was guilty. I'm not the kind of person who waits for answers to fall into her lap. My job is about finding truth in numbers, untangling lies hidden in ledgers. If they thought I'd stolen $60,000, I'd find out who really did. I logged into my work portal, thank God for remote access, and pulled up the tools I used for fraud investigations. My firm had been tracking a string of account breaches in the region, small banks like Mom's, where money vanished in neat, under-the-radar withdrawals. I hadn't connected it to her case before, but now it felt too convenient. I sent a message to my colleague, Sam, who handled data forensics. "Need transaction logs for an account at First Valley Bank. Urgent." "Personal?" He didn't ask questions. Sam never did. By midnight, I had what I needed: timestamps, transfer details, and a digital trail that didn't point to me. The withdrawals were slick. 3 transfers, $20,000 each, spaced 4 days apart, just below the threshold that triggers federal alerts. They went to an account in my name, all right, but it wasn't mine. The account was opened 2 weeks after I'd helped Mom with her app, at a branch I'd never visited, with an email I didn't recognize. The IP address for the login wasn't my apartment's Wi-Fi or Mom's phone. It was from a coffee shop. In town, one Ethan frequented for remote work sessions. I leaned back in the motel chair, the hum of the heater filling the silence. Ethan, who'd been struggling to pay off his student loans. Ethan, who'd asked me last summer if I could spot him a few grand for a business idea that never materialized. Ethan, who'd been in the house the weekend I set up Mom's app, lingering in the kitchen while I typed in her passwords. But it wasn't just Ethan. The account setup required a physical ID, Mom's driver's license. She kept it in her purse, which was always on the hall table. Nora lived at home half the time, floating between jobs, always borrowing things from Mom's room. I remembered her rifling through Mom's purse once, looking for cash for takeout, laughing it off when I raised an eyebrow. Had she seen the password notebook I'd left in the drawer? Had she copied it? I pulled up the bank's security footage, grainy but clear enough. First withdrawal, December 1st, 2:17 p.m. A woman in a scarf and oversized sunglasses, signing a form with a familiar loopy handwriting. Nora. My sister, who'd hugged me just hours ago, had walked into the bank pretending to be Mom. The second, video showed Ethan, no disguise, just his usual hoodie, chatting with the teller like it was any other day. The third was Nora again, same scarf, same fake confidence. My phone buzzed. A text from Nora. "Claire, we're just worried about Mom. Please just tell us what happened." No apology, no doubt, just a plea that felt like a trap. I didn't reply. Instead, I dug deeper. The alternate email tied to the account was new, created the day after I left town. The recovery phone number? Ethan's. They hadn't just taken the money. They'd built a frame around me, using my own help against me. The arrogance of it made my blood boil. They thought I wouldn't check. They thought I'd just take the blame. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the motel desk, piecing together the timeline. Nora had access to Mom's purse during one of her errand runs for Mom's meds. Ethan had been at the house, probably watching over my shoulder as I set up the app. They'd waited until I was back in the city, then moved fast, assuming no one would suspect the golden child had competition. But there was something else, something I couldn't shake. Mom's silence. She hadn't defended me, hadn't questioned their story. Why? Had she always doubted me deep down? Or was she just too tired to fight? The next morning, I drove to the bank, not to confront anyone, but to get hard copies of the transaction logs. The teller recognized me. Small town, same faces. "You're Ellen's daughter, right?" she asked, handing me the forms. I nodded, my throat tight. Ellen, my mom, who thought I'd betrayed her. I spent the day cross-referencing signatures, matching them to Nora's scrawl on a birthday card, Ethan's on a lease agreement he'd once asked me to review. By evening, I had a folder, timestamps, footage stills, account details, evidence, the kind I presented in boardrooms, but this time it was personal. I didn't go back to the house. Not yet. I needed one more piece. I called Sam again, asked him to trace the coffee shop IP. He came through by dusk. Multiple logins from Ethan's laptop, not just for Mom's account, but for other small transactions in the area. A pattern. My brother wasn't just desperate, he was sloppy. And Nora, she was the opportunist, riding his coattails. I zipped my laptop bag shut, my hands steady for the first time in 24 hours. They wanted me to return the money? Fine. I'd return something better, the truth. I sat in my car outside the motel, the folder of evidence heavy in my lap, the engine still ticking from the drive back from the bank. The snow had stopped, leaving the town blanketed in a quiet that felt too calm for what I was about to do. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Nora. "Claire, just talk to us. Mom's a mess." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. A mess? She hadn't been a mess when she looked at me like I was a stranger, when she let Dad's ultimatum slide without a word. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat. Talking wouldn't fix this. Talking was what families did when trust was still alive. For me, it was time to act. I drove back to the house the next afternoon, December 24th, Christmas Eve. The streets were lined with wreaths and glowing reindeer, but the cheer felt like a stage set for someone else's life. My parents' driveway was empty except for Mom's sedan. Ethan and Nora must have been out, probably avoiding the fallout they knew was coming. I parked at the curb, my breath visible in the cold air, and gripped the folder like it was a shield. This wasn't about confrontation, not entirely. It was about laying the truth bare and letting it do the talking. I'd spent years dissecting financial crimes for strangers. Now, I was doing it for my own family. The irony wasn't lost on me. The front door was unlocked, like always. The house smelled of cinnamon and cloves, Mom's holiday candles burning, on the mantel. I found her in the living room, sitting alone on the couch, a half-knit scarf in her lap. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her shoulders hunched like the weight of the last 2 days had settled into her bones. "Claire," she said, her voice soft, uncertain. She stood, the knitting needles clattering to the floor. You came back. I didn't smile. I didn't hug her. I just set the folder on the coffee table, its black cover stark against the festive red table runner. I didn't take your money, Mom, I said. But I know who did. She didn't reach for the folder. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to me, searching for something. Maybe an apology, maybe a lie. I didn't give her either. I opened the folder and spread out the evidence. The bank statements, the transaction logs, the stills from the security footage, Nora's loopy signature on the withdrawal slip, Ethan's casual grin as he handed over Mom's ID. 3 withdrawals, I said, my voice steady, the way I sounded in client meetings. December 1st, 5th, and 9th, $20,000 each. Not online like you thought. In person, by them. I pointed to the photos. Mom's hand trembled as she picked up the first still, her glasses slipping down her nose. She didn't say anything, just stared at Nora's face, half hidden by that scarf. The front door creaked open, and Ethan's voice called out, Mom, you home? He stepped into the living room, Nora trailing behind him, both of them freezing when they saw me. Ethan's eyes darted to the folder, then to Mom, who was still clutching the photo. Nora's face went pale, her purse slipping from her shoulder to the floor. What's this? Ethan asked, his voice too casual, like he was commenting on the weather. I didn't answer him directly. Instead, I pulled out the IP logs and laid them next to the photos. You used the coffee shop Wi-Fi to access Mom's account, Ethan, I said. The same place you've been working from for months. And Nora, you didn't even bother changing your handwriting. Did you think no one would check? Nora's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. Ethan crossed his arms, his jaw tight, but he didn't look away. You're blowing this out of proportion, Claire, he said. It was a loan. We were going to pay it back. A loan? I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. A loan doesn't involve forging Mom's ID, I said. A loan doesn't involve framing me. Mom's head snapped up at that, her eyes wide. Framing? She whispered. I nodded, pointing to the account details. The money went to a new account in my name, opened with an email I've never used. The recovery number is Ethan's. You two set it up to look like I did it. The room went quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. Mom sank back onto the couch, the photo slipping from her fingers. Nora started to cry, not loud sobs, but a quiet, hiccuping sound that grated more than it should have. We didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, her voice breaking. It was supposed to be temporary. I needed the money for my loans. And Ethan... She stopped, glancing at him, but he shook his head, like he was warning her to shut up. I didn't need her to finish. I'd seen enough in my job to know how this worked. Desperation, opportunity, and just enough resentment to justify it. They'd always envied me. The promotions, the city apartment, the life that looked perfect from the outside. But this was something else. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Why didn't you just ask me? She wasn't looking at me now, but at Ethan and Nora, her eyes wet. I would have helped you. You didn't have to. She trailed off, her hands twisting the scarf in her lap. Ethan shifted, his sneakers scuffing the hardwood. You always said Claire was the responsible one, he muttered. Like we couldn't be trusted, like we were kids who'd mess it up. I felt a pang, not for him, but for the truth in his words. Mom and Dad had always put me on a pedestal. Valedictorian, scholarship winner, the one who made it. I'd never seen how much that hurt them until it was too late. I turned to Mom. You believe them, I said, not accusing, just stating a fact. You didn't even ask me if it was true. Her face crumpled, and for the first time since I was a kid, I saw her cry. Not the quiet tears of a funeral, but raw, messy sobs that shook her shoulders. I didn't know, she said. The bank said it was you, and I didn't want to think my other children. She couldn't finish. I didn't make her. I'd spent the last 2 days untangling their lies. But this wasn't about proof anymore. It was about what they'd chosen to believe. Dad walked in then, his coat still on, snowflakes melting on his shoulders. He took one look at the scene. Mom, crying. Nora frozen. Ethan glaring at the floor. Me standing with a folder of evidence. And he knew. "What's going on?" he asked, but his voice was tired, like he already sensed the answer. I handed him the folder without a word. He flipped through it, his face hardening with every page. When he got to the security footage stills, he stopped, his thumb tracing Nora's signature. "You did this?" he asked, looking at her. Then, "Ethan." Neither of them answered. He didn't need them to. "I'm not pressing charges," I said, breaking the silence. "Not because you don't deserve it, but because I don't want Mom and Dad to lose more than they already have." Nora's head snapped up, her eyes wide with something like hope. But I wasn't done. "But I'm done here. You wanted me gone? You got it." I zipped the folder shut, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Dad started to say something. "Claire, wait." But I shook my head. "You told me not to come back unless I returned the money. I didn't take it. But I'm not coming back anyway." I walked out, the same way I had 2 days ago, but this time it felt different. The snow crunched under my boots, the air biting my face. I didn't look back at the house, at the Christmas lights still glowing in the windows. I drove to the motel, packed my things, and headed back to the city. Boston felt colder than I remembered, the skyline sharp against the gray sky. I went back to work, back to my spreadsheets and client calls, but something had shifted. I didn't check the family group chat. I didn't call Mom on Sunday nights. When Dad left a voicemail, I let it sit for a week before listening. "Claire, we were wrong," he said, his voice heavy. "We should have trusted you. Please call us." I didn't. A month later, a letter arrived. No return address, just Mom's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a photo. Me, Ethan, and Nora, maybe 10, 12, and 14, building a snowman in the backyard. On the back, she'd written, "I didn't see how much we hurt you. I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time, then tucked it into a drawer. Not the one with the folder, that was locked away, a reminder of what I'd uncovered. A new drawer with old birthday cards and a recipe for cranberry bread I hadn't made since. Ethan moved out west, according to a cousin who still talked to me. Nora got a job in town, but Mom barely spoke to her. Dad sent me an email, offering to pay for therapy, like that could stitch us back together. I didn't reply. Instead, I started a side project, a free workshop for seniors at the community center, teaching them how to spot financial scams. It wasn't much, but it felt like something I could control. One evening, an older man stayed after class, his hands folded, around a cup of bad coffee. "You're doing good work," he said. "My daughter would have liked you." I smiled, but inside, I felt the ache. My parents had a daughter like me once. They just forgot who she was. Christmas came again, a year later. I didn't go home. I didn't bake the bread. I put up a small tree in my apartment, strung with lights I'd bought on a whim. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "The house isn't the same without you." I read it twice, then set the phone down. There's a kind of grief that doesn't come from losing someone to death, but from losing who they thought you were. My family made their choice, and I made mine. I wasn't the thief they accused me of, but I wasn't their daughter anymore either. And for the first time, I was okay with that. Did you enjoy the story? Hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts.